During these extraordinary moments in history, we now look to rebuild Colorado. We'll talk with Governor Jared Polis. We'll also look at the digital divide, another way COVID-19 has exposed some inequalities in our society. Plus, we'll honor some local heroes and take a look at how people turn to the arts in times of crisis with Colorado Poet Laureate Bobby Lefebvre on this edition of Connected Colorado. Hi, I'm Wendy Brockman. Thanks for joining us. As we look to rebuilding Colorado, let's start right off with our special guest. Thank you so much for joining us, Governor Polis. I know you've been really busy with the immediacy of the COVID-19 response and reopening Colorado, but we'd like to talk a little bit more about long-term strategies, maybe 2, 10, 20 years down the road. What do you see as the future as we rebuild Colorado?
Well, Colorado has a bright future because it's a great place to live, great place to raise a family, great place to retire. We're blessed with amazing wild areas, outdoor spaces, great weather and sunshine. The future's bright. We just have to get through these challenging times, and it ain't over yet. Some of our neighboring states, Arizona and Utah, have large spikes in coronavirus. We need to remain vigilant, wear masks when we're out, try to stay 6 feet from others. If we remain vigilant, I think we can get through this sooner rather than later.
Have you talked at all about how potentially something good could come out of this?
One thing that I think will catch on is the opportunity to telecommute for many workers. We're seeing large parts of our economy telecommute without losing any productivity. I think a lot of Coloradans appreciate the flexibility of being able to stay home a day or two a week if they want to work from home. I think that's a plus also in terms of reducing traffic, reducing pollution. I also think we're all learning to really value our loved ones, our family, our parents, if they're with us, our siblings. It's really a time when we really hold close and treasure those who mean the most to us.
So is it too early to see examples of new businesses or new business models that are emerging?
Where there's a challenge, there's always innovation. It's been fun to see so many restaurants adopt their business model, curbside liquor, which I think will stick. They're doing outdoor spaces, so it's safer. It's great to see that innovation. Delivery services. There's a lot going on. There's immense opportunity for enterprising, creative entrepreneurs, and we're a state of entrepreneurs, so I know we're rising to the occasion.
On top of that, we're looking to rebuild and restructure our law enforcement institutions after the George Floyd incident. What does Colorado need to do now to move forward from that?
Well, there's a significant bipartisan police reform bill that is moving through the legislature, should reach my desk soon. But that's really just a start. This is by no means a mission accomplished moment. We need to have an honest conversation about race, about opportunity, about disparate impact of our criminal laws and our criminal enforcement. And I really think that this is just the beginning.
How do you heal and change that culture?
It takes that honest conversation with leaders of minority communities, with police, with elected officials. I think everybody knows that law enforcement has an important role in keeping people safe. We also know that there are those who live in fear of law enforcement, even though they're law-abiding citizens. Americans should not have to worry about being choked to death or being singled out for discrimination if they want to go bird watching in the park just because of their skin color.
And part of that is ensuring economic opportunity for everyone, right?
Absolutely. There's an economic piece to this discussion as well. Educational equity, which leads into economics, making sure that people of all racial backgrounds, income levels, geography, all have the opportunity to get the skills they need to earn a high-paying job, to earn a living in a high-paying job.
Tell us about the Governor's Council on Economic Stabilization and Growth.
Yeah, we pulled together a couple months ago, really the early days of this. I recognize this is not just a healthcare crisis, it's an economic crisis for our state, for the livelihood of people. So we pulled together some of the best thinkers, bipartisan from across our state, business leaders, representatives of workers.
Who's on it?
Oh, we have about, I think there's 200 people on all the subcommittees. There's 7 committee chairs, all of their minutes and notes are all up on the website, and people can look at that. They also put forward, most importantly, recommendations to me, and we've acted on, I think, 60% of those. Recommendations to the legislature, including a small business stabilization fund, which is a bill that has passed and I will sign soon, and recommendations to the federal government. And some of those have worked their way into the different federal bills that are going through the system.
Do you have a favorite idea that's come out of that?
And there's no silver bullet in this, Wendy. So it's not like you do one thing and it solves it. There's a lot of things that we need to do together. Certainly, I'm excited about some of the ability that we've done in the state to let restaurants operate outside, removing paperwork, opening up sidewalks and streets. That excites me because those sorts of things sometimes take government like months to figure out. I did an executive order 24-hour turnaround on the state piece, which is the liquor license to serve liquor off premises so they can serve a table wine that's, across the street. So that's been fun. I mean, just seeing that creativity that restaurants are showing, because we can have more space when we're outside, and it's also inherently safer outside when there's not recirculating air.
Unfortunately, some businesses have closed, and we know some others will not be surviving as well. What kind of new businesses could take their place?
Yeah, business models are adapting. Some businesses, even though they did participate in the Paycheck Protection Program, they might not be able to make it for the long run. It's a tough time. And we've had tough times before. The recession of 09, 10, really tough time. Right now, there's also a recession in the energy industry with the prices around oil and gas. So look, we've had tough times before. But we have a bright future as a state because we have a lot to offer, a great quality of life, and unlimited opportunity for those who are creative and seize it.
So when people lose their job, maybe like a waitress, for example, can the state do anything to retrain them for a new job? Is that part of the picture at all?
Well, certainly right now, many people who have temporarily lost their jobs are getting unemployment insurance. There is a federal piece to that goes steps it up through July. In the case of restaurant workers, they're generally back. Of course, some restaurants weren't able to open, can't come back. Some of those folks are looking for jobs, but most of them are back. And we have a great way to try to align the skills of workers with the needs of the workforce. We do that, of course, in partnership with our community college system and with our workforce development centers at the county level across the state.
So as mental health is part of this too, and I'm wondering if you look past two other incidents like 9/11 or the hurricanes or wildfires to see how people, I don't know, can band together and, make the best of it. We know that spirit is there.
Yeah, I think the tough times pull us together. The flood of 2013, the Great Recession, the health scare now, as well as the recession. Look, we are united as a people. We're not, Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. We're not black and white. We're not Western slopers and front rangers. We are Coloradans. We're Americans, and we're proud of that. And we're going to get through this together.
How do we move to both a more economically and environmentally sustainable Colorado? Are you looking at that picture as well?
Yes, we are. When I ran on a bold goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040, we're making great progress on that. Excel is going to be at 80% by 2030. We're working with Tri-State, another big utility, rural electric co-ops. As I said, telecommuting coming out of the COVID-19 crisis, less people that commuting to work. I think there's long-term learning for companies. Hey, we can allow more of our employees this opportunity, and it can increase productivity, increase employee morale, also decrease traffic and decrease pollution.
Thank you, Governor. Any final thoughts?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Communities all around Colorado have stepped up and come together during the COVID crisis, including in the city of Broomfield.
One of the things that just has always amazed me is how this community comes together in times of need. And that has certainly been the case the last few months in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Broomfield residents and Broomfield nonprofits have all just been so amazing to work with, to come together at a time of need and show that we can work through this and come out on the other side way better than where we started.
We're delivering Meals on Wheels is what we're doing. Can't think of anything better to be doing today.
Serving the citizens of Broomfield that can't get out and be able to get food for themselves. I think that moments like these offer a pretty unique opportunity to feel like you are connected to your community. Opportunities to volunteer and serve really help us pull together as a community and know that we're not alone.
We are here today with a bunch of volunteers who are putting together care packages. In times like this, where things are really hard, we just need to come together and be there for each other.
Today and every Tuesday and Thursday, we are providing bags of food to anyone who comes and drives through. It's as important as ever to make sure that people have access to the food that they need.
Welcome to Fish. How are you today?
We're seeing a lot more families in need. We are averaging 80 families a day. We're seeing a lot of people who are afraid and uncertain, but at the same time relieved that they can come to a place like Fish and get support.
We are just excited to be here, and we thank everybody for their patience and their time.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's really important that people get fed.
Other people are feeling the same way, that we are all in this together, to realize that we are a community and that as a community we will pull through this.
We are stronger together, 6 feet apart. We all need to be putting the public in public health. This is a really difficult time for a lot of people, and there is help out there. Please don't feel like you're alone.
You know, we're a special community, and it's great to see how this community comes together in times of need.
When we think of civil rights and equality, we don't generally think of the internet, but there is a digital divide in our state and our country.
I think this was a real wake-up call for everybody about how important computers and internet access is across the country.
The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives and helped expose the problem of digital inequality. Large sections of the population in Colorado do not have the same access to internet as most of us have come to take for granted. Urban or rural, low income or high income, West Slope or Front Range. There are significant differences in the way we all experience the internet. Two factors that exclude communities from digital connectivity are poverty and proximity. If a household cannot afford a computer and an internet service provider, they're excluded. Also, if a household does not reside in an area with quality internet service, they are also excluded.
It's so difficult to exist and thrive these days when you don't have access to the internet.
I'm an older fellow. I've had pneumonia in the past. We're isolated here, my wife and I, and have been since the middle of March. I might be dead if it wasn't for broadband connection.
We even have areas that have no coverage, like zero connectivity and zero cell phone coverage, which has made it almost impossible for those families and students to be able to do anything like receive health care or do e-learning, things along those lines. So it's finally, I think, boiled up to the point where we've shone a really harsh light on that inequity, and there's a groundswell to where we have to do something.
The Ignacio School District in Southwest Colorado has a strong technology program, but when the pandemic hit, connecting to the internet became a serious issue.
When you're doing online learning, it's pretty crucial to be able to connect and see people face to face. The majority of the kids have found a way to get online. We've got a public library in town, and they have Wi-Fi hotspots in the parking lot. And then we've extended our wireless here at the school district as well, so it's available in the parking lots of all the schools.
Not confined to rural areas, even in our biggest cities and suburbs, many people don't have a broadband connection. According to U.S. Census data, as many as 20% of Denver's residents don't have access to the internet. Many of these households are in low-income areas. And the problem is not just access, but knowledge and understanding of devices and the internet as well.
What we found during this process is that many of our students were using their parents' phones as a Wi-Fi hotspot, which might have been okay, to do nightly homework, but it wasn't suitable for a daily virtual learning environment.
If you think about the internet being supplied much like a pipeline supplies a commodity, the pipe that we have running to Denver is limited. And that's one of the choke points for us in Western Colorado. In our region, community of Lake City in Hinsdale County, it's a very small, robust, vibrant community there that a lot of folks depend on tourism. That community currently is served by one pipe, a pipe that has less bandwidth coming into that entire community than I have coming into my home here.
We still have in this country millions and millions of people who are not getting broadband. What we have needed, and I've again said this for years, is a national mission to get this done as a true priority. We need to treat it as a utility. It's something people must have. It's something that we have to make sure people get, and then it is overseen, regulated in the public interest to serve the common good. And we just haven't had a policy really that's been effective in closing the digital gap. We still have in this country millions and millions of people who are not getting broadband.
The Southwest COG has been working on broadband access for the last 10 years. We are working on middle mile open access fiber to be able to connect the communities so there's better choice, more affordable, abundant, and through that redundant connectivity for our communities. And from that backbone, helping the ISPs create a wireless overlay to serve the areas that won't have fiber or won't have fiber soon. The biggest challenge is just the sheer cost of it all. Building fiber is not cheap in the rural areas. There's never going to be a return on investment for a private company to be able to put that kind of infrastructure in here. And so the goal is to figure out how we can do this with a government backbone, leasing out to the private companies, or a public-private partnership and build. That's the biggest hurdle. It's not need, it's not knowing where it goes, it's not engineering or plans, it is sheer dollars at this point.
We've worked on some various proposals to increase the pipeline using grant funding. We do that for a period of time to allow us to actually own our own pipeline. And so that's the long-term strategy.
The city of Longmont built its own high-speed fiber optic broadband service, NextLight.
And we started out like most other communities. We really didn't want to do this ourselves. We reached out to incumbent providers and others and wanted to find out if they'd partner with the city to be able to bring that type of technology to Longmont. We didn't find anybody that was interested in doing it, so we ended up doing it ourselves.
People who are trying to organize and talk to one another and practice the arts of democracy. All of these things are contingent upon broadband. Some Americans have them, but far too many don't have broadband, and they are being denied the tools that they need to be fully participating citizens. That's why I have called it a civil right.
There is no one solution for ensuring quality internet access, but the problem is very real and very serious. Just as electricity had to be made available to everyone a century ago, today it's broadband and must be made available to all. And while individual solutions to the problem need to be addressed, community by community, a stronger coordinated effort from other levels of government are also needed, and as quickly as possible.
Broadband is certainly a big part of our lives, especially since we have had to come up with new ways to do things. Well, now we have a special tribute to a man named Paul Carey. He's the Aurora paramedic who volunteered on the front lines of COVID-19 in New York, and he tragically lost his life to the virus. Here's his return to Colorado.
It is often said that the test of someone's character is what they do when someone else needs their help.
It takes a special person to dedicate their life to serving others, especially during such a challenging time in our nation's history.
We could all be a little more like Paul. At a time when the nation was in crisis and the world was unknown, Paul raised his hand.
You rush into situations and you don't know what you're going to be confronted with, but yet you still serve.
In the midst of this tragic epidemic, Paul Carey bravely shared his talents and used his years of emergency medical expertise.
I want you to know that the state of Colorado will never forget his service. We will never forget the commitment that he made to this community, to this state, and to our nation.
The outpouring of love, respect, admiration from the state of New York to here at home in Colorado has been overwhelming.
Paul really is the example of what a true hero is.
After 9/11, New York City coined a phrase, all gave some, and some gave all. Thank you, Paul.
You're a true hero to New York, to Colorado, and to the great country of the United States.
But America doesn't bend and it does not break, because we are the home of heroes like Paul.
This is the last call for paramedic Paul Carey. Dispatch will now show paramedic Carey out of service, but not out of our hearts and memories. Godspeed, paramedic Carey, as you journey home to take your place on God's squad of fallen heroes. We have the watch from here.
Just days before Carey passed away, he actually volunteered for another month of service in New York. Truly remarkable. And as we mentioned earlier, we're living in extraordinary times of crisis and tragedy, but also opportunity. And that's why we want to talk with Colorado Poet Laureate Bobby Lefebvre. Bobby, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation.
You are the youngest and the first person of color to hold this honor. So tell us a little bit about your heritage and the role of Poet Laureate.
Yeah, so my family has been in the Southwest forever. Before borders, grandparents were migrant farm workers. My mom's family came from Mexico, so we've called the Southwest home for a long, long time, like so many people that look like me have. And so this honor was, of course, an amazing opportunity. I'm grateful that the governor has, chosen a poet like me to sort of mix up the idea of what poetry can look like, what it can sound like. And of course, being the youngest and the first person of color is very, very, it's an honor. And I've been telling people throughout the last, 8 months that we've been talking about this, that art and culture is just a microcosm of our society in general. And I'm intelligent to know that I'm not the first young person or the first person of color qualified for this position. But the way that our systems are set up and our institutions are set up, our voices are marginalized and they're not centered. And so part of the work that I'm doing as Poet Laureate is amplifying, centering, and really spending more time with not only voices in my own community, but other communities who have also been either purposely silenced or left out of the conversation for far too long.
Why do people turn to the arts during a crisis or tragedy?
I think that the arts and poetry in particular serves as sort of a holding space for our collective consciousness. We are able to use art and culture to tell stories, to distill all of the messages that we are receiving and give them to people in a way that is aesthetically beautiful, as well as a strong message. I think that art serves both as like a primary message. So you see these protests that are happening now on the streets. People are using chants that rhyme. These are songs. This is art. This is music. And so it's a wonderful tool to hold almost what the heart and mind cannot.
How do they help with social justice and change?
Yeah, again, I think that, art and culture has always been at the forefront of all social change. I think back to the 60s and 70s when Black and Brown communities were really fighting for civil rights. At the front of those protests were again songs, were poems. Artists were being invited to speak, to set the tone, and so art and culture is a very valuable tool in beginning movements and maintaining movements and reimagining the future. I think so much we talk about how artists kind of tell the truth and tell it like it is, but also artists are tasked with imagining a better tomorrow. And without that creativity, without that that sort of ability to see something new, to create something new, we can be stagnant. So we look to artists in times like this to really serve as prophets and harbingers for whatever the future holds.
Can you see the good that could come out of the COVID-19 crisis and the George Floyd tragedy?
The good that can come out of it. Yeah, I think we're seeing that now. I think, for one, COVID has taught us things about ourselves, about our communities, about things we already know. It's reinforced a lot about, systemic inequality, and all those things that I think that we know. So yeah, I think that the ability for us to spend so much time, those of us who have the privilege to, be at home, working from home, having extra time to think about who we are and what we are and why, I think that introspection is very important in these times. And as far as George Floyd goes, unfortunately, we've been dealing with these issues for 400 years in this country. This country loves to sort of preach a sort of understanding of itself that is built off of fallacy and lies, right? We know that this country was founded off of the genocide of indigenous people and the enslavement of African people. And as a country, we've never come to terms with those things. So really what we're seeing now is a people in a generation saying, no more, and the large scale protests that we're seeing are moving into policy change, and we are starting to, I believe, move the needle in a way that has taken far too long for us to reach sort of a collective reckoning with our past and starting to figure out what we want for our future.
Can we put you on the spot and have you do a short poem for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what you consider short, but I will do, I've been thinking, like you all and like this conversation, I've been thinking about justice and freedom and liberation a lot lately, what it means, who it's for, how it shows up in society and in love and literature, in our hearts. How do we get there? Is it a destination? Is it a process? Is it an imaginary place? I still don't know. But this poem's about justice. There are sweet bells of justice ringing righteously in the distance. From where we stand, the sound is faint, but unmistakably beautiful. From where we stand, faith convinces us to listen to what we hunger to one day see. These recondite sounds, majestic as the Quetzal's coo. These recondite sounds, soothing as the lullaby the sunset sings as it slow dances across the horizon, and we run with hope and abandon in the direction of the chimes, traverse an American landscape that has made winners of some and bullseyes of others, traverse an American landscape that has been stolen, enslaved, and interred with bones and blood. Even still, we run feverishly toward the bells because on good days, we know the ideals that live where the music is promise equality, promise prosperity, promise liberty and justice for all. Our hearts are compasses that point in the direction of freedom. Our hands, shovels unafraid to dig into the dirt. Our voices, keys we use to open doors not meant for us to walk through. Our minds, luscious playgrounds where dreams and better tomorrows marry in the chapel of perseverance. For in the distance, maybe just outside our reach, balanced scales beseech to be seen. In the distance, the sword Lady Justice wields in her right hand is not slashing disproportionately. In the distance, her blindfold has not yet slipped from her eyes. Beneficent is the red road we have traveled, dignified the path we have carved with promise. We are the fruit our ancestral roots dreamed into existence, flowers cultivated in the garden of hard work and sweat. Courageous is the one who speaks the truth boldly, even if butterflies pinball inside their belly. The one who swims against an ominous current when the waves are unjust. Over a lifetime, the human heart beats more than 2 billion times without stopping. This means that we have 2 billion reasons to stretch our wings, to fly in the face of adversity, to dance amid the smoke, to love through all the hate. May boundaries be nothing more than invitations for exploration, a starting line from which we sprint in the direction of the uncharted, a catapult that launches us in the direction of the fruition of our dreams. May justice prevail. May it be not a fleeting illusion only pursued, but a beacon of virtue we attain tirelessly and justly together. For in the distance, the bells are still ringing, promise is calling, and we will not stop running until we arrive, until we all are free.
Wow. Thank you, Bobby.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
very
having me.
Beautiful.
For having these conversations. Yeah.
It's nice to have this, perspective. You don't always think about how the arts can impact our culture, but they truly do. And I'll give you another opportunity if there's anything else you'd like to share with us.
No. I think I think as artists, I guess two artists, use this time to create and share your talents and to lend your voice to our collective reckoning right now. I think there's so much work to be done, and art can be both a sword in the salve. So I think that we use it as this thing that is ancient, and hope that what we do resonates with people, and that ultimately we can affect the world that we live in.
We hope so too. Thank you, Bobby.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you so much to Bobby Lefebvre, Governor Jared Polis, and all of our awesome community members for helping make our state so great. Thank you for watching. I'm Wendy Brockman. We'll see you next time on Connected Colorado. On the next edition of Connected Colorado, we'll talk with Governor Jared Polis about rebuilding our state. We'll look at a form of inequity in our state, the digital divide. And we'll talk with Colorado Poet Laureate Bobby Lefebvre about turning to the arts in times of crisis.